So, Power Rangers Samurai. It is not held in high regard among Power Rangers fans. See, when Saban bought Power Rangers off of Disney, who was, you bet, way more than happy to simply get rid of a franchise. They had Marvel now. They don't need a boys superhero franchise. They didn't even want Power Rangers in the first place. They did it out of contractual obligation, blah, blah, blah. Disney basically said, here you go, wash our hands, we'll sign all the paperwork, and Saban had to rush the production of Power Rangers Samurai. Instead of the year-long pre-production thing, it ended up going for like 6 months, which is madness in TV show time. Proper writing takes time. Proper casting takes time. Proper filming takes time. Editing takes time. And of course, you had to do this on a truncated timetable with probably boatloads of paperwork because you were filming in New Zealand. So I'm not exactly surprised that we got the product we got. Especially when we have a 2017 interview with Dana Geek where one of the writers, James W. Bates, says, we had to rewrite 15 scripts, 5 new episodes, do 2 clip shows, and shoot them all in 97 days, because they were on a deadline. And it didn't help that the wise guys at Nickelodeon were not exactly doing them favors, because they imposed a 20 episode per season rule plus the specials, but, well, who cares about clip shows? And they also aired the third episode as the debut episode and had to wait to the end of the season, or well into the next season, to air the actual first 2 episodes. What the hell? So let's talk about Power Ranger Samurai Origins Part 1. The Origins Part 1 lays the foundation for the stories and the characters, and the problems thereof. Centuries ago in Japan, Nightlock monsters terrorized villagers, so Samurai Rangers were recruited, somehow, in order to face off this threat, and they passed these powers down from parent to child. In the present day, we open with a child actor playing hide and seek with his friends, where monsters emerge from a gap between worlds. The Nightlock exists in the Neverworld and enter through these gaps in reality. Before the Moogers, the foot soldiers for the season, can just eat the kid, they are attacked by a folding Zord. We meet Mentor G and Jaden Shiba, the 18th leader of the Samurai Rangers, because he's the 18th of the generations. Gotta say, introducing Jaden as a descendant of a man who destroyed your masters years ago honestly would have been a much stronger introduction than what we got, because we were very much thrown in media res when this was airing on TV. This introductory fight scene is great and utilizes the theme song, Go Go Power Rangers, very well. Then we get this scene after the opening credits, and we immediately have our first problem. Mentor G is talking to Jaden. Jaden Shiba. Jaden Shiba, who is a white guy who is at the head of a samurai family called the Shiba clan. Now, there is some explanation for this. At the time, fans pretty much just shrugged their shoulders and said, yeah, they intermarried and adopted members left and right, hence the diverse American cast. An explanation in Power Rangers Prime, which is an alternate universe, it's been compared to Marvel's Ultimate Universe, seemingly states that Samurai Rangers fought the Nightlock everywhere from feudal Japan to colonial America, though they seemingly fought more than Nightlock. Mutants and other monsters were also part of this. The problem, if you can call it that it is that I want to see a series based off of this. I want to see Samurai Rangers hunting Nightlock throughout planet Earth. Anyways, Justin Bieber over here is aloof and has no desire to work with a team. Okay, so his desire to not work with a team differs from his Sentai counterpart. In his Sentai counterpart, he was a Kagemusha, a political decoy, basically raised as a samurai in order to hide the true head of the Shiba family. So, Because this is based off of feudal Japanese lore, he would essentially be lying to the retainers as being the true lord of the Shiba household. Here, this is America, or at least something like America. This is made for an American audience, so they would not be familiar with Japanese feudal politics. And of course, the whole lordship thing doesn't really work because America doesn't have titled nobility like the Japanese do. Or at least the Japanese did at one point, and then that got abolished during the American occupation, but that's a different story. Anyways, Master Xandrid, the gruffly monster voiced big bad of this season, awakens, and the first thing he does, besides standard berating of his minion Octoroo, is to get drunk. Yep, even as a kid, I knew this was booze and not medicine. He's just happy that he killed all those Samurai Rangers years ago. Yeah, Octoroo has some news for him. And that gets his Oiran, I guess, to stop playing music when she hears that the Samurai Rangers survived and reproduced. Yeah. What's interesting is that Xandrid refers to these rangers that he fought all those years ago as brats. So either his memory is not working because he fought those rangers a lot long ago, and he treats them like they're children. But here's the thing. Xandrid treating anyone younger than him like children being a character trait I could see, but that's not the case. So I'm not sure if this is a continuity error or Xandrid's memories on the fritz, or he is so old that anyone younger than him is a child to him. Pick your poison. Anyway, it's time to muster the teams using magical arrows. Jaden grabs the morphers, then he uses symbol power to create a horse so that he can go meet his team. Yeah, this is another thing I dislike from changing the Sentai. Okay, so calligraphy brushes were embedded into the cell phones of the Sentai heroes and non-LED. They keep the calligraphy, but they don't keep the brush, except for Lauren, who later comes in. I had to say, this is a very weird choice. I'm okay with Power Rangers trying to differentiate itself from the Sentai, but this simply does not do. It just makes the morpher into another cell phone. Not particularly interesting. So another thing from the Sentai that I really miss, who the hell is driving this? I suppose it could just be Mia's dad or an older relative, or hell, yeah, no, I can't say that's her brother because that looks nothing like him. The Shinkengers had a support staff called the Kuroko. They essentially played the roles of stagehands in theater. If you need to change sets, they would be there to change sets. Let's contrast Kevin meeting Mia in Samurai with Ryunosuke meeting Mako in Japanese. Oh, when Ryunosuke was a theater producer, not a theater producer, a theater actor in Japanese, not an Olympic swimmer, which I guess that helps with the Japaneseness versus American. It's a petty change that I don't really care for because I think the translation works pretty well because they both had to give up what they wanted in order to take up the mantle as samurai. It's just how they handle that later in the season that bugs me. So the heroes get their morphers, suit up in these uniforms, and start confronting the monster. One transformation sequence later, they begin their fights, and these rangers legitimately don't shut up with the puns. So many puns. Honestly, Megaforce is worse with this, but this just doesn't work. I'll grant you, some of them do make sense, such as Emily saying how cutting down Moogers is like cutting down weeds back home, but it's jarring to see them make so many puns during this fight sequence in a very short amount of time. Look, the presence of the puns isn't the issue. They actually cut a joke from the Sentai here. In the Sentai, Takaru throws off the hand of one of his retainers who vows to protect his lord. It was Ryunosuke. Who else would it be? And then he just says, protect yourself instead, and then pulls out a secondary weapon and basically does what Jaden does here. The problem with throwing around all these puns is that the jokes end up hurting the team by making them look collectively really arrogant and possibly break the immersion depending on their characterization. Bottom line, when the guy who is an unironic fan of Avengers Age of Ultron is telling you to stop talking and stop wisecracking during battle, I think you should do that. To be perfectly nitpicky right here, I'm kind of annoyed how Kevin kneels before Jaden because this series doesn't want to do the Japanese feudal thing, but it does at the same time, and it's not helped by the stock footage being very rooted in Japanese feudalism. It's just really, really annoying. This time I can excuse because it's part of the suited actors in the fight scene, but come on. No. Look, I get it's nitpicky, but it's a symptom and not a cause. Anyways, they get armor in the cockpits, which is actually an American thing. I really like this change from the Sentai because this is the only time the Sentai actually shows armor and not robes. And it's not even the Sentai, it's American footage. So, the monster is defeated, the team moves into the Shiba house, and that's the end of the episode. I call this the cultural uncanny valley because it really is. It wants the aesthetics of samurai, swords, robes, brawls with swords, arrows, large armies fighting each other. But it doesn't want to be too Japanese, as if that was going to hurt the overall international market, and to some extent that would hurt the international market in some places given Japan's history. But at the same time, this leads to some bizarre story choices. One example behind this is the bizarre symbol powers, because we all know it's just calligraphy. Samurai doing calligraphy drawing the Japanese characters. Later episodes, they would actually sometimes practice drawing these characters. Now, this is actually a cultural translation that could be done well, because in Japan, I don't really think they care about stroke order when you're actually writing these things. I think that's only with a brush, because certainly I don't think anyone in China knows the stroke order of their actual characters. They do whatever's quickest. Hell, I don't even know how to write the characters. I just type in the romanization into Google Translate and get the characters that I want. It would be cool if they actually pulled in only Jaden being the actual Japanese person or the one with the Shiba bloodline, and he just had to grab 4 randos off the street in order to draft them to be his retainers, and thus them having to practice drawing these characters would make a lot more sense because they are getting a crash course in how to be Japanese samurai retainers. And since we're living in the Shiba house, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And then you'll still end up running into the same problems. Let's be honest, this is Power Rangers Samurai. Even with a strong opening like that, you're going to end up having issues. Mainly because there's an episode later in the season where Kevin tells Antonio, the sixth ranger who comes on, this is the work of a computer nerd and not a samurai. Because this whole show, Shinkenger, was based off of essentially taking period piece tropes and ramming them through a Sentai filter. In the Japanese, Ryunosuke derides Genta for being a craftsman, because craftsmen were towards the bottom of the pyramid when it came to the Japanese caste system. Because peasants and craftsmen may be at the bottom, but they actually make something. Merchants just exchange goods. Once more, Power Rangers Samurai just wants the aesthetics of the samurai, but because of how chaotic its production is, and its strict adherence to the Sentai to the point that the script editor was a translator, it ultimately ends up taking tropes out of Shinkenger, putting them in Samurai without much rhyme or reason. It's like they had two competing visions. One wanted to make it as little Japanese as possible, sort of like how Star Wars takes a bunch of aspects of East Asia and some old film serials and World War II ideas and then distills them all into a space opera. They wanted to probably do something closer to that, although probably not put it in space. And then there's like the vision that wanted to only have the Japanese elements because, well, hey, we have this, why not translate everything? So we just get a cultural chop suey that is just a too many cooks spoil the soup. Or maybe the showrunner had no idea what he was doing and was sort of reeling in horror at everyone trying to change the Sentai and then him trying to snap it back, only to just never fix it the correct way. Well, fix is in quotation marks. But those are just my thoughts. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.